Without exception, all countries in the world are in debt. The United States has reached record levels in its history, with a debt exceeding $38 trillion. The European Union lives under a debt burden of around $14 trillion. Japan is close to $9 trillion. Even Saudi Arabia, known as oil-rich, as well as export giants like Germany or China, are indebted at levels that cannot be underestimated. But here a justified question arises that makes people think, if everyone is in debt, then who is the creditor of all this money? At this point, the complex yet fantastical and fascinating world of financial history emerges. Money, power, authority, and history intertwine in such an intriguing way that it becomes clear nothing is as simple as it appears from the outside. Debt should not be seen merely as a burden. Debt is the mysterious architecture of the modern world. From wars to crises, from economic peaks to collapses, everything exists on top of an invisible debt structure. And when you look at the links of this debt chain, toward the end of the chain you face an unsettling truth. The world is not actually in debt to anyone. It is in debt to itself. However, this does not mean that everyone benefits equally from this system. Today it is said that total global debt has exceeded $315 trillion. This is more than 3 times the size of the world economy. How did we get to this point? To understand, we must return to history. The concept of national debt emerged from war, long before credit cards existed and before internet banking was even imagined. In 1694, while England was at war with France, it began spending its gold reserves. As the king's gold diminished, he turned to the wealthy merchants of the time to meet his needs. In return for a system of interest income guaranteed by future tax revenues, the merchants lent money to the king. To manage this complex system, the Bank of England was established. This move was actually a revolution that ignited the opening of a new era. The state could now spend money it did not possess. In return, merchants received bonds representing the promise of the state, which could be transferred from hand to hand. Thus, government bonds were born, and the foundations of modern finance were laid. France adopted this system quickly. The Netherlands perfected it. The United States, however, used it both to finance its War of Independence and to expand westward. From this perspective, borrowing was not a sign of weakness but of success. Empires once conquered land in pursuit of wealth. Here, bonds were issued to increase interest income. Battlefields were replaced by balance sheets. Centuries later, debt became the world's largest export product. The United States has $38 trillion in debt. Japan has more than $9 trillion in debt. And the world adds more than $1 trillion in new debt almost every 100 days. Every country is in debt. Every bank lends. Every citizen is both a debtor and a creditor. Once again, the question arises, who are we really in debt to? Take the United States as an example. Nearly half of its $38 trillion in debt is held by investors. 2/3 of these investors are American. Banks, funds, insurance companies, pension funds, and the Federal Reserve. The remaining 1/3 is held by foreigners, amounting to approximately $9 trillion. The largest share belongs to Japan at about $1 trillion, followed by China with around $800 billion. Countries such as the United Kingdom, Luxembourg, and Belgium also hold shares. So saying the U.S. is indebted to China is partially true, but there's no exaggerated amount here. This is less than 2% of the total debt. In reality, most of the debt is held by the United States itself. The Treasury issues bonds. American banks and funds buy these bonds. The Federal Reserve often repurchases them and creates new money. The American public pays taxes, and those taxes return as interest payments to the pension funds of the American people. An incredibly large cycle, a constantly repeating debt loop within the system. Of course, this cycle does not occur only in the United States. The same cycle exists all over the world. Japan lends to the United States. The United States lends to Europe through the IMF. Europe lends to developing countries through the World Bank. Developing countries, in turn, invest their foreign exchange reserves in US and EU bonds, lending money back to advanced economies. Everyone carries everyone else's debt. Everyone makes promises to one another. This great system fits together like a puzzle, with each piece completing the other. The hidden yet most influential piece of this puzzle is the financial markets, hedge funds, sovereign wealth funds, massive pension funds, central banks. These lobbies determine which country can borrow cheaply and which must pay interest simply to survive. When credibility is lost, currencies collapse, governments fall, and painful economic restructuring begins. Yes, the answer to the question of who governs lies in democracy, but the answer to who survives has always been the markets. Central banks are the lifeblood of the system. They do not merely manage debt, they also produce it. They create new money in exchange for bond purchases. One person's debt becomes another person's asset. Every dollar in the market represents a debt somewhere. Can money exist without debt? This system has stood securely for years. As long as investors believe that states will pay interest, the system continues to function. But what happens if trust is shaken? We saw it before, in Greece in 2010, in Argentina, in Sri Lanka. And debtor countries pay heavy prices: austerity policies, rising unemployment, rapidly impoverishing populations. Yet even if the system collapses, a new cycle is always restarted. Debts are restructured, new debts are created, and the machine starts moving again. In the 21st century, debt does not exist to be paid off, but to be rolled over. Governments never seek to eliminate debt. This is not a secret plan. It is an openly stated official policy. Citizens must repay the principal on their loans. But for states, debt is like a membership. Contracts are constantly renewed. The real issue is paying interest. Ultimately, the global economy has become dependent on this interest. The United States will not eliminate its debt, nor will Japan, because no one expects them to. Bonds are considered the safest assets in the world. Banks, funds, and central banks are all built upon these bonds. If the United States attempted to reduce its debt to zero one day, the financial system would collapse, because the most important safe asset in the global economy would disappear. This is why states continue to issue debt. This borrowing system is the backbone of capitalism: regular, stable, consistent, continuous. Of course, to be frank, politicians saying we will eliminate the debt may be comforting, but economically it is impossible. The real goal is not to eliminate debt, but to ensure its continuity and maintain trust. If trust disappears, the numbers become meaningless. Interest rates soar. The economy comes to a halt. And although the phrase, "we owe it to ourselves," is partly true, it is also misleading. Because interest payments are not distributed equally among the public. Taxpayers pay. Large investors collect. Debt is used as a transfer of income not only between countries, but also between social classes. As global debt increases, global inequality increases as well. Those who hold debt win, those who pay lose. The result is social injustice. Debtors are not monsters, nor are creditors villains. They are simply participants in this system. But when the capacity to create new debt is exhausted, the same question inevitably arises. Who is the real creditor? There is no single culprit responsible for this system. Not China, not the IMF, not Wall Street. In fact, all of them together, and we citizens as well, are part of this wheel. Modern finance has turned debt into money. States issue debt, banks multiply it, investors sell it, and the public lives within this system. The distinction between debtor and creditor has become almost invisible. Once, debt was a chain. Today, it means balance. If that balance is disrupted, if trust collapses, everyone will remember what debt truly means. Never forget. History is nothing but repetition. If you liked it, subscribe and share your thoughts in the comments.